Have you ever wondered how AI can take your marketing game to the next level? Welcome to a groundbreaking session on revolutionizing ABM with Generative AI. Today, I'm introducing Daniel, who's going to share the secrets that have boosted our strategy, saving us time, increasing productivity, and strengthening customer connections. After spending years mastering demand generation and go-to-market strategies, he found that generative AI is a total game changer for ABM. In this session, you'll hear about his journey from traditional marketing to using cutting-edge AI in the field.
Thank you all for joining the Next Level ABM event and for taking the time out to join this session today. Before we get down to business, I just want to spend a couple minutes about myself, really because I'm trying to weave the narrative and tell the story of why this presentation, why this topic, and what's my point of view. And my name is Daniel Engelbretson. I've spent a lot of time in demand generation. For forever, I thought about myself as a marketing practitioner, kind of through and through, especially demand generation, especially in the context of business to business. But I can't really deny that the last several years I spent building and scaling a business. So not only do I have that kind of distinct demand generation background and some of the digital transformation that's a hallmark of the last 10 years of demand generation, I also have spent the last several years building and scaling a business for myself, which has given me quite a lot of opinions on GTM, go-to-market strategy, building and scaling, cost, efficiency, things like that maybe the typical marketer isn't thinking about in their day-to-day life. So from there, as I mentioned, 10 years building and scaling demand generation, and a lot of that was for lean manufacturing, where I was helping them digitally transform their marketing efforts to build pipeline and drive revenue for the business. And that led me to a stint in VC-backed tech, where it went from the slow going, slow growth, minimal incremental spend, unless thoroughly justified, to super fast growth, super fast investment, tons of money go at all costs. The roots in lean combined with the speed and kind of frenzy almost of VC in a loving way taught me so much about two sides of that same coin, which is building and scaling your demand generation and your go-to-market motion. And then most recently in the last year or so, I've been really on this path of trying to make generative AI and AI more accessible to you and to everyone and to myself, to my family, to my friends. Because when ChatGPT hit the mainstream and I started playing with it right away, my mind was just blown at the opportunity and the potential, as I know so many others were. And I just couldn't wait to figure out how to get value out of this. So a lot of that background was a lot about me, but a lot of that kind of shades the story of where am I coming from and why. And I think that's really important as we get into it. Let's get down to it. I really want to start the story with what is account-based marketing, or what's at the heart of account-based marketing. And this is my opinion, tempered by a lot of other opinions. And my point of view is that really at the core of what you're trying to do, at the heart of account-based marketing, you're trying to understand the problem that you solve and how uniquely you solve it. That's your product and your value prop and the features and the specifications and all that. Then you're trying to understand who has that problem, the roles, the companies, the people who have those problems, and how is that problem experienced in their day-to-day? What does that problem mean to that person? And as you do that, you're identifying, well, what's the best fit type of account for your organization or your business to prioritize, and how should you segment that? Because just because you can win a deal doesn't mean it's the right deal. Just because you have a customer doesn't mean it's the right customer. And then lastly, the point is it's really about building and expanding relationships. I picked this up from my friend Tori Dye a long time ago, really championed this idea. But I really believe that your marketing, your go-to-market motion, your account-based effort is about dialing in on who are the people that your organization should have relationships with and why, and how can you get those relationships at scale. So that's how I think about the core of account-based marketing, saying the right thing to the right people at the right time so you can set those conversations, build those relationships, and help people solve problems with your product. So if you'll take that as the definition of account-based marketing, then let's think about account-based GTM success. And the terminology changes a lot over the years. ABM, ABX, ABAI. I think I saw recently ABGTM, AB sales and marketing. There's a lot of ways to talk about this, but what we're all talking about is when I take into context the account that I'm trying to reach out to or engage with, and I take into context that I'm trying to drive success for my go-to-market or how I bring my solutions to market to solve problems for those accounts, how do I maximize the value of that effort or drive that success? And so I believe it really begins with that relationship. Who is the relationship you're trying to build and why? And as you do that, as you identify those people that you want to build relationships with, what you're trying to do is maximize value creation. If you think about the objective of manufacturing, of you're trying to make something and deliver on that, you're trying to maximize the value of that effort that you're putting in. So whatever your product does, delivering on the promise of that, you want to do that as efficiently and quickly and successfully as you can. And in the process of doing that across your GTM motion, from the point that you first find that person to the point where that person's coming around for renewal, you're trying to lean out value destruction across all of that. So stuff that takes too long, stuff that takes too much resource, stuff that takes too much time and energy from your team, stuff that takes away from the customer experience, something that drags on your customer's ability to actually use your product successfully or buy your product successfully or get the benefit. You're trying to lean all that out and eliminate that waste. And at the end of the day, you're trying to drive customer outcomes. Whatever your customer signed up for when they bought your product, what the idea that they had in mind of this is what I'm going to achieve with this product, did they achieve that or not? And if they're not dialed in on that achievement, did you articulate it? Did you sell it? Was it the right person? Did you understand the product or features well enough? Did you understand the problem well enough? Did you deliver on that promise? And so as you think about driving success for your account-based GTM, you should be thinking about how do I create value in the process? How do I maximize that? How do I eliminate waste from that, lean out value destruction? And how do you make sure the client actually gets or the customer actually gets the desired outcome that they were trying to get when they bought your product? That's how I think about driving account-based GTM success. So let's say that's today's reality. Enter generative AI. Generative AI, depending on where you look and how you think about it and what books you read and what point of view you want to take, is at least a $4.4 trillion opportunity. This is from the McKinsey & Company Economic Potential of Generative AI. And there's a lot of different ways to think about this, and I don't really get into that too hard. But the biggest one that surfaced in this, and I think a lot of people know this at this point, is that generative AI has a huge opportunity to impact productivity. And I think the fear factor drives us to job elimination or robots replacing humans. And I don't really want to get into the fear factor of it. I really want to get after kind of the dream of it. And the dream of it is, how could I spend less of my time on stuff I don't want to do so I can spend more of my time on the stuff that a human is really, truly good at, that I am really, truly good at. So without going too hard into this, there's 4 key areas they called out: customer operations, marketing and sales, software engineering, and R&D, where they're going to see where we are going to see the biggest impact. Like 75% of that impact is from just leaning out work that people don't want to do to be able to do that better. So the main point here is that if you invest some time and energy into generative AI, you can substantially increase labor productivity across your company, across the economy. And I would just say, I think we all also know this, the era of generative AI is just beginning. And I think that's a really key takeaway, particularly for the executives out there, that yes, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of tactics, a lot of stuff we're going to hit right now that's really interesting to know and be aware of. But there's a deeper strategic question here of, how do I even frame up the opportunity? And how do I build a plan, a mission, and a vision, and set goals around taking advantage of that opportunity? And that's really what I want to hit hard today. Here's how I think you should think about it. This is my perspective. And I think you think about it in terms of the triple constraint. How many times have you heard the idea you can be good, you can be fast, or you can be cheap? You can be 2 of those, but you can't be all 3. Something that's good and fast is probably not cheap. Something that's good and cheap is probably not fast. Something that's fast and cheap is probably not good. How often do you hear that? And what I would tell you is that with generative AI, never have we ever had tools in our toolbox that are so capable of delivering on all 3 points of the triple constraint at the same time. We're really going to hit that now. You should be able to move faster. with less resources and get a higher quality result if you're using generative AI right. If you're not, then you won't hit on these, but if you are, you should be hitting all three of these. Biggest opportunities with worker productivity, and back to the McKinsey research, 65% of your workday, of your team's workday, is absorbed by work that AI could automate. So let's talk about what that is. How different would your life or your team's life be, or your department's life be, if they could focus their time on the stuff that was actually value add? And some of that comes back to even being able to get your head around how to define value add in the world of generative AI. This is posted from somebody who I love following, Ethan Mullick. And this is about a study that was done with Boston Consulting Group, where they took 7% of their workforce, 7% of their workforce, and worked alongside a team of elite academics from universities like Harvard and Wharton to go do a study that said, what happens when we put generative AI, in this case, it was just straight GPT-4, in the hands of our elite consultants? What happens? And what they found, and this study is super interesting, I encourage you to go check it out, is that consultants using AI finished 12.2% more tasks on average, completed them 25.1% faster, and produced 40% higher quality results than those without. That is huge. So while I can tell you all day long, good, fast, cheap, so on, and McKinsey can save $4.4 trillion, this data is really getting at the heart of, we can go faster, we can go higher quality, and we can get more done, which I love that. So check that out. The last one here is the 4 quadrants of knowledge. What really jumped out to me when I started using generative AI is this idea of the 4 quadrants of knowledge. You probably have seen this before. This is not unique. You know what you know, then you know what you don't know, but then there are things you don't know that you know, and there are things you don't know you don't know. And my point of view is that generative AI levels that playing field a lot, rounding out what we don't know and plugging gaps where we didn't know we had them. But to say that a little bit differently, if you have a team of practitioners, or you are a practitioner and you're working on a task, writing a blog, writing an email, putting out an ad, doing some sentiment analysis, whatever you might be doing, you know how to approach that. And you know there's probably other ways to approach it that you're not as familiar with, but you don't know what you don't know about approaching that. And there are some things that you just have so much experience, you don't realize that you know that. Like, hey, maybe you need to have a certain sample size, or hey, maybe don't be leading in the way you do these survey questions, or things like that. Generative AI flips that around. And if you know how to frame up what you're trying to do, which is what a skilled practitioner can do, if you can just frame that problem up, generative AI makes huge gains on your ability to avoid those blind spots and be consistently better at what you do. We're going to hit that pretty hard. But I can't go there, and I can't get into the real meat of this presentation without first acknowledging some of the risks, which I think is really important to point out. And the first is the risk of ignorance. There's a story of where, I'm sure you guys read it before, where a lawyer went to court and submitted all this disposition, and he had generated all the disposition from ChatGPT, and it was all fake. And it was just a total embarrassment for him that he had tried to defend this case with disposition that was all fake, because he didn't understand what generative AI is and isn't. And so I'm not going to get into that now, but there's a lot of risk in ignorance, and there's a lot of value in getting up to speed on what can generative AI actually do and what should you not use it for. The second is confidentiality. Some of this has been resolved and some of this is a little bit older, but there's this famous story now of these Samsung engineers that put source code from Samsung's products into ChatGPT. And that was back in the days when ChatGPT was still training on the material. And that material got sucked into the model and then basically accessible to the world in a non-confidential way through that model. And so source code got out into the world. So the main point here is be smart about what you put in and don't put in, and understand the risks of confidentiality and whatever tool that you're using. And the last is the risk of discrimination. And I don't want to hit this too deep right now, but there's inherent bias in some models, whether you mean for there to be or not, whether you want to be nefarious or not. How the models are trained it's inescapable that there's a risk of bias. So you just need to be aware of that. And this particular case with Airbnb is a particularly good one, but there's a lot of cases out there where people built content or built a product or did a thing with generative AI that generated an incredibly biased and harmful result, harmful from like an ethics and moral perspective, without really meaning to. So now we're going to talk about specific stuff that you can go do. And I got a lot of them here. So in my opinion, realizing the potential of AI and ABM breaks down into there's at least six use cases that we're going to hit here and some other stuff that we're going to pepper in here. The first one is around finding good fit target accounts. I'm sure as an ABM practitioner, you've heard of the concept of ICP, or ideal customer profile. And in that case, maybe there's some criteria that you have of what makes a good account a good account. Maybe it's a set of firmographics, like where they're located and how big they are and how much revenue they have. But maybe there's some more subjective stuff or qualitative stuff, like how do they talk about their DEI policy, or how do they talk about strategic investments in their 10Ks, or whatever it might be. So there's this niche criteria out there that you may want for your ideal customer profile. And you may go buy that data from places like ZoomInfo or choose your vendor for data today. But then there may be other niche data that you really just can't go get. You can't buy that from somewhere. With generative AI, there are tools out there as simple as your own ChatGPT and as complicated as some that we're going to look at in a few moments, that you can start to really customize. How do you want to think about that? And what used to take a human just hours and hours to go row by row in an account and go to that website and read about that website and see how they talk about their policy or see how they talk about their objectives, now a machine can go do that reading at scale, crazy fast, looking for what you want to find and then report that back to you. So that's one use case. The second use case, and we're going to get into these a little bit more. The second one I want to touch on is streamlining personalized outreach. I think this one comes up a lot, and people are writing emails or LinkedIn messages or outbound call scripts or video scripts or whatever it might be, and trying to dial that in for the person. As a simple example, this is one that I've done. You have an event and people register for that event, and you get a list of those attendees back, and you say, all right, I want to go reach out to those attendees. Today, you can have ChatGPT or other generative AI tools go row by row in that list of attendees and tell you what's their background, what kind of company they work for, what industry they're in, how might they view the topic based on what they have on their profile or based on what they have on publicly accessible URLs, basically. So you can go scrape that content, learn about that individual from publicly available places, and then tweak your response back to that person based on who they are and what they care about at scale. So being able to dial in on what you want to say to somebody without having to go do an hour's worth of piecemeal research is really an incredible use case. Generating video content's another big one, whether you're literally generating it with generative AI tools or you're using a platform like Vidyard or something like that to generate a script or even do the deep fake that kind of speaks on your behalf. I personally have started noticing the deep fakes coming into my LinkedIn inbox, like talking to me about whatever thing. But generating that video content where you used to have a salesperson, you wanted to do a little talking head video that goes on a landing page talking to that account, and you're trying to get better consistency or more consistency or even just scale out of that person's time when they're going to go talk to those accounts. Now with generative AI, you can speed up not only the script of what they could be or should be saying, or also the production, but even with some tools, actually literally rendering the video on behalf of the salesperson. So the next one I like to talk about is optimizing email tactics. Just using generative AI to write email and then optimize those emails based on your email performance and your best practice. I think that's an incredible one. Writing marketing copy is a very popular one as well, whether you do it manually with something like ChatGPT or you buy a tool like Jasper. And then generating display ads is one of my personal favorite ones because now with tools like AdCreative.ai, you can generate hundreds of concepts, animated, video, HTML5, all formats, all channels in like 10 seconds and just go through and select the ones that you want. So not only is it a huge cost reduction, but also a major time saver. So I just wanted to feed a few ideas of how to realize the potential of AI and ABM. And now we're going to get into it. So first we're going to hit a live demo, and there's a couple of use cases that I want to hit. So excuse me while I flip out of this and jump into a live demo. Hey everyone, I've got to tell you, I couldn't resist going all out for this demo. You know, putting my money where my mouth is. So, guess what? I scripted, performed, and even jazzed up this entire demo with generative AI. I'm super pumped to demonstrate it. Let's keep it snappy though. Time's a ticking. Alright, let's kick things off with a little behind the scenes of how this presentation was born. Here's how you can take into consideration key inputs to frame up an output. There are 3 screenshots. Here is the first. Note that what is demonstrated here is how, when you know what inputs should be taken into consideration to complete a task, it becomes a matter of documenting those inputs and structuring them in such a way that the generative AI tool can help you make short work of the task. Here is the second screenshot, showing how I took questions received from prior conversations as well as feedback I solicited from people who have previously seen me speak, and I wove that into the context provided to the AI. Here is the third screenshot, where I fed the AI background context on best practice that I compiled. And here's what actually kicked out. The session title, description, abstract, and outline for this session were 100% generated by AI. And if you want to talk about results, consider this. When I was first invited to speak, it was not as a keynote, and after submitting my abstract, I was invited to take on the role. How about that? Now, onto something a lot of us love and hate at the same time. Crafting ads. Imagine making ads that hit the spot every single time, and all thanks to our AI buddy. Let's take a quick look. As we saw previously, it's about framing the problem, or in this case, knowing what inputs you need to be able to write a good ad. This is something a seasoned practitioner may already know, but perhaps not a junior employee. And then there are the technical specs that we may know but not remember every time. Using generative AI, you can lock in the approach, generate consistent results, and take it one step further to analyze results and recommend new creatives. If you like this example, then scan the QR code up on the screen and it will take you to a walkthrough demo and a template you can copy. And fun fact, this QR code was generated with generative AI using Hugging Face. But hang on, there's more. Picture having a handy helper for blog and email writing, making your content pop and resonate with readers, and all without breaking a sweat. And we're not even going to have time to dive into the row-by-row sentiment analysis for inbound leads, BDR scripts, keyword research, or ICP data. I gotta tell you, I had a blast jazzing up this presentation with some funky neon imagery, tying in nicely with our conference theme. If you're wondering how I managed to dig up so much neon imagery that worked for my presentation, it was courtesy of Midjourney, and making these images was nothing short of fun. Now, to pull off this demo, I used a combination of a voice transcription with Google Docs, ChatGPT to write the actual script, and Descript, where I literally cloned my voice to make this audiogram. And hey, see that profile pic? That's the work of profilepic.ai, generated specifically for this event. I know we breezed through that, but hey, I'm around for a good chat afterwards. We're wrapping up, but before we do, let me tell you, the possibilities with AI are through the roof. It's all about figuring out the right tasks, feeding it good data, and letting it do its thing. And hey, if something caught your eye, give me a shout. I'm all ears for a deeper dive and to share some cool links and resources. So here we are, fingers crossed the AI worked its charm and you guys had a blast in these swift 4 minutes. Here's to exploring new frontiers in business and having a bit of fun along the way. So we talked about a lot of cool use cases and we saw a couple of really neat demos. And so I just thought I'd put up on the screen what are some of the specific off-the-shelf examples that kind of speak back to what I was just talking about. So whether you're trying to automate the search and discovery and analysis of a target business, something like Odoo, or you're streamlining prospecting while improving engagement using AI with something like Reggie.ai, where it's literally writing your sequences for you, or you're generating scripts, or you're even generating video with something like Vidyard, or what I personally really love this one because it's from SalesLoft and it's free. You're crunching millions of B2B emails and getting feedback on what words to use or not use, or why or when, based on the segment or the person you're reaching out to. A really common one like Jasper, this one's very popular for quickly producing marketing copy and getting some boundaries around that, where it takes a little bit less tweaking, a little bit less hard work, like what you saw in the demo, in terms of setting it up with something like ChatGPT. And you have something more purpose-built that you can just plug into. And then, as I mentioned earlier, my favorite one recently has been AdCreative.ai. If you find yourself creating a lot of ads for display ad tech or other kind of visually engaging display channels, AdCreative.ai is really cool, and I highly recommend checking it out. So let's keep going. So we talked a lot about cool use case and cool things you can do. We saw some demos. What about measuring for success? How do I know that my team or my company or that I'm getting value out of generative AI and my ABM? And here's how, this is probably not a surprise to you at this point, here's how I break that down. There's speed, there's quality, and there's value for effort. So on the speed front, can you get in market faster? Can you get your ads in market for your webinar coming up faster? Can you reduce the time it takes, the lead time it takes that you know you're going to go to this event to get all your materials produced and in market for that event? Or if you have some new product introduction or some M&A activity and you've added a product or you're adding a vertical, can you speed up how much time it takes you to go find who you should be targeting and why and what you should be saying to them? Can you learn faster? So if you're running maybe 5 or 10 sets of ads in a vertical and you've got that well structured, and then you go look at how those ads perform and you say, hey, based on the performance of these ads, here's what I've learned and here's what I should do different and here's how I should iterate those ads, as we saw in the demo earlier. So iterating faster. So you should be able to go faster with generative AI for sure. It may take a little bit of setup on the front end, but once you're there, you should be able to go a lot faster. The second is quality. You've got to be able to get better quality. And for me, the most obvious places for that is these 3 ones here. Being able to consider more or broader points of view in the way that you're writing or producing materials, because you're crunching interviews from stakeholders or you're crunching interviews from the market third party or crunching YouTube videos or whatever it is, or crunching other webinars out in the world to go process this qualitative information and take that into consideration when you're writing and documenting. Validating best practice is a huge one. Like oftentimes, particularly if you're a tenured marketer and you've been doing something a long time, if I were to say, write down the best practice for X, and you had all day long to do it, you would come up with a stellar set of best practice. But if I asked you to go do that thing right now and you have 10 minutes to get it done, the likelihood you forget or overlook or move through that best practice too quickly, or maybe you're a little rusty on it, is pretty high. If you're using generative AI to produce on the back of your best practice, then you will get it every single time. Not to mention you have the ability to go crunch other best practice from trusted sources and roll that into what you're doing so you can stay fresh on that best practice way faster than having to go learn that for yourself. And the last one here is about thorough use of info. How often do you know something or do you have access to some information that just doesn't make it into consideration because you just don't have the time to get to it? You ran a webinar last week and you got a bunch of questions in it, and you know you got those questions, but you don't have time to go through all those questions because it's not well documented to really use that to shape how you craft your next webinar, for example. Now, because the speed at which you can crunch that is basically instant, you can start to crunch that information and be way more thoughtful about using info you already have. And the last one is value for effort. You should be able to get more value for the same effort or less effort than you do today. So either you're getting more concepts in the same amount of time, or you're getting more learning in the same amount of time, or more consistency with the same amount of time, or you're just having to spend less time on grunt work. So as you think about measuring the adoption of generative AI, these are the categories in which I would encourage you to be thinking, and some simple places to start to try to get that value. So let's talk about piloting AI. We'll close and land in the plane here. Where should you start with generative AI in the context of account-based marketing? First of all, I totally think about this as a digital transformation effort. And if you've not read the book, The Technology Fallacy, I highly recommend it. It talks a lot about digital transformation and the importance of human involvement in that. But you're thinking about using new tech to enable novel or more effective strategies. So as you think about ABM or your account-based motion, I would break that into 4 categories. Target. Who should you be targeting and why? Can you build a better ICP? Can you source richer, better, more nuanced data to really nail that ICP and really learn that over time? Engage. What to say and where? Can you improve the delivery of your messaging? Rapidly iterate to learn what works while identifying new opportunities. Activate. Prioritize outreach and enable sales. Identify what is interesting, speed up the delivery of relevant information, and scale personalized outreach. And measure. Optimize and improve. Identify trends and process qualitative information faster, overdrive your feedback loop, to drive deep learning, like we saw in the BANT analysis, or we see in inbound analysis as well. So I hope this gives you some fun ideas for how to go pilot AI for yourself and for your ABM motion and your business. So if you like this, or you like some of these examples, or you want to talk more about it, hit this QR code and that'll take you to me, and connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever's kind of your preferred path. And let me know what you thought about this, or let me know if you want to talk more about how to get more value out of generative AI for your business. Thank you again for joining B2B Marketing Exchange's Next Level ABM event. I'm really excited to have been here with you today. My name is Daniel Engelbretson, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.